Okay, so look at the calendar. It is Monday, February 9th, 2026.
It is.
And if you are anywhere near the Horn of Africa, or even just, sitting safely in an office reading the diplomatic cables,
Yeah.
you can practically feel the heat coming off the page.
Oh, it is blistering. And we're not talking about a standard trade dispute here, not at all.
No.
We are looking at a diplomatic exchange that has gone from like zero to active war rhetoric in, well, what, 48 hours?
Exactly. We have a stack of documents here,
Huh.
and it feels incredibly heavy. On one side, a scorching letter from the Ethiopian government sent this past Saturday.
Right.
And on the other, a rebuttal from Eritrea that was released just today that is,
Right.
well, dismissive doesn't quite do it justice. It's venomous.
It's a total rejection of reality. I mean, it's the diplomatic equivalent of slamming the door in someone's face.
And then locking it?
And then locking the deadbolt. Yeah.
Right. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to parse this language word by word, because in this part of the world, the distance between a strongly worded letter and actual artillery fire it's terrifyingly short.
And the stakes are global. We're talking about the Red Sea, one of the most strategic shipping lanes on Earth. When these two neighbors start shouting, the rest of the world really needs to listen.
So just to set the ground rules, we aren't taking sides. We don't have a horse in this race.
No.
We're just here to decode what Addis Ababa and Asmara are actually saying to each other, and maybe more importantly, what they're hiding between the lines.
Yeah, usually the subtext in these situations is louder than the text itself.
So let's start with the immediate shock to the system. The news that dropped today, Monday, this official statement from Eritrea's Ministry of Information. I read it 3 times, and the tone is just jarring.
It is. You have to remember, diplomatic rebuttals usually follow a script. They're polite, they're vague, they use phrases like, we beg to differ, or...
We hold a different view.
Exactly. This statement is none of those things.
No. They came out swinging. I mean, the big takeaway is that Eritrea isn't just saying Ethiopia is wrong about the facts. They're saying the entire complaint is a hallucination.
False and fabricated. Those are the specific words.
Fabricated. That's such a heavy accusation. That's not a misunderstanding.
It's massive. In diplomatic terms, accusing a neighbor of fabricating a crisis is, basically calling them a liar on the world stage. It's not you have the wrong coordinates. It's you made this whole scenario up.
And they didn't stop there. I was struck by the emotional language. They call the accusations astonishing in both tone and substance.
Astonishing is a fascinating word choice for a government ministry. It suggests shock, but it's also a kind of performance, isn't it?
How so?
It frames Ethiopia's actions as irrational. If I call your statement astonishing, I'm implying that no reasonable person would have ever written it.
It almost feels like a gaslighting move, like, I can't believe you would say something so crazy.
Precisely. It tries to delegitimize the entire position right out of the gate. It paints Ethiopia not as a rival with a grievance, but as this erratic actor. But what's critical for you to understand is that Eritrea doesn't see this as a one-off.
Right, the campaign narrative. They aren't looking at this week in a vacuum.
No, the statement explicitly connects this letter to a prolonged pattern of hostile actions. They even put a timestamp on it. More than 2 years.
Which is so interesting, because casually you might think, oh, they made peace a few years ago, won a Nobel Prize, everything's fine. But Eritrea is saying, no, for the last 2 years, you have been coming after us.
It changes the framing completely. If you accept Eritrea's view, this letter from Saturday isn't a reaction to a border incident. It's just the latest weapon in a 2-year harassment campaign. It's what they call a deplorable episode.
Deplorable. Again, not pulling any punches. But here's the thing that confused me, and I want your take on this. If someone accuses me of invading their house, which is basically what Ethiopia is doing here, my instinct would be to show the receipts. I'd say, I wasn't there, I was at the movies, here's my ticket.
The alibi defense.
Right. But Eritrea doesn't do that. They don't offer any proof. Why?
It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy. The statement says they have no interest in engaging in empty recriminations.
Translation. We're not even going to dignify this with a debate.
Exactly. They believe that if they start arguing the details, we were at mile marker 10, not 9, they are validating Ethiopia's premise that something happened.
So by refusing to argue, they're trying to starve the fire of oxygen.
That's the goal. They explicitly say engaging would only inflame and further complicate the situation. They're positioning themselves as the adults who refuse to play a childish game. It's a power move. Your accusation is so absurd, I won't waste the ink refuting it.
It's effective rhetoric, but it leaves us, the observers, in a tough spot. because one side is screaming invasion and the other is yelling fiction. They can't both be right.
And that's where the danger is. Because while the diplomats are arguing about fiction, there are real soldiers on that border with real guns. And when communication breaks down like this, the margin for error just disappears.
So to understand why Eritrea is so indignant, or pretending to be, we have to look at what they're responding to. Let's rewind 48 hours to Saturday, February 7th, the catalyst.
The letter from Foreign Minister Gideon Timotheos.
And this wasn't just a tweet. This was a formal diplomatic missive. And when you read the charges, I mean, these are not minor infractions.
No. If these charges are true, they are acts of war. There's really no other way to parse it.
Let's break down the three big ones, because the specificity is what's so alarming. The first one is the big red flashing light. Occupation.
Ethiopia is claiming Eritrean forces are physically occupying sovereign Ethiopian territory, not passing through, not patrolling near occupying.
And for a country like Ethiopia, which is so proud of its sovereignty, never colonized, remember that word occupation hits a very, very specific nerve.
It's existential. A government can't survive if it allows a neighbor to occupy its land without a response. You're backing yourself into a corner where you must act.
Okay, then there's charge number 2. Incursions. And they get specific. The Northeast.
And the geography matters here. The Northeast border is rugged, difficult terrain. It's the Afar region. So accusing Eritrea of incursions there implies a breach of defenses in a very sensitive area.
And finally, the third leg of the stool, rebel support.
This is the force multiplier. The letter accuses Eritrea of cooperating with rebel groups, but along the northwestern border.
So map this out. We have regular troops in the Northeast, and we have rebels in the Northwest.
It paints a picture of a pincer movement. Ethiopia isn't just complaining about a rogue unit. They're describing a coordinated multi-front effort to destabilize their entire northern perimeter.
And that context explains the tone of the demand. The foreign minister didn't just ask for an explanation. He demanded immediate withdrawal.
It's an ultimatum. Get out. Stop supporting the rebels now.
And usually, an ultimatum like that comes with an implied or else.
The or else is always there in diplomacy. Immediate withdrawal implies that if you don't withdraw, we will make you withdraw.
So we have the setup for a war. Accusations of invasion, an ultimatum, and a flat refusal by the other side to even acknowledge the situation. It's a deadlock.
It is, but, and this is the part that makes this whole thing so fascinating, there's a trapdoor in the Ethiopian letter.
The twist. I read this part 3 times because it seemed to completely contradict all the angry shouting.
You're talking about the olive branch?
If you can even call it that. In the same letter where he's screaming invasion, Foreign Minister Timotheos says Ethiopia remains open to dialogue.
It seems schizophrenic on the surface. You're attacking us, but let's have a meeting.
Right. How does that even work? Please stop shooting so we can grab coffee.
Well, it's all about the sequencing. It's not an unconditional offer. The dialogue is. It's contingent.
Contingent on what?
On Eritrea meeting the demands first. Withdraw your troops, stop the incursions, then the door is open.
Okay, so it's a reward. Behave, and then we can talk. But talk about what? Usually you talk about the border. But the letter throws a massive curveball.
A huge curveball. Ethiopia says it's ready to negotiate on broader bilateral issues,
Right.
And then they name drop the big one.
Maritime matters.
And specifically, possible access to the Red Sea via the port of Assab.
Okay, stop. Pause the tape. Assab.
Assab.
For listeners who might not have a map of the Horn of Africa tattooed on their eyelids, let's explain why Assab is the magic word here.
It's the Holy Grail. Ethiopia is a nation of, 120 million people? And it is landlocked. It has no coast.
Which is a strategic nightmare.
It's an economic stranglehold. They rely on Djibouti for almost all their shipping. It's expensive. It's a vulnerability. But Assab is in Eritrea, and it used to be Ethiopia's main port before Eritrean independence.
So Ethiopia looks at Assab like a phantom limb. It feels like it should be theirs, but it's gone.
Exactly. And for the last few years, the Ethiopian leadership has been very vocal about needing Red Sea access. They've called it an existential right.
So connect the dots for me. We have a letter accusing Eritrea of invasion, but the solution offered is leave, and then let's talk about giving us access to your port.
It forces us to ask a very cynical, very necessary question.
Which is
the security crisis real? Or is the security crisis a tool?
I mean, is Ethiopia manufacturing this tension to force Eritrea to the table about the port?
It's a classic strategy. It's called coercive diplomacy. If you want something from your neighbor and they won't give it to you, you don't just ask nicely for the 10th time. You create a crisis. You say, your fence is on my land. This is a disaster.
And then when your neighbor's panicking, you say, well,
Yeah.
we could settle this if you let me use your driveway.
Exactly. You create leverage where there was none. By accusing Eritrea of invasion, Ethiopia puts Assad back on the menu. They are linking the resolution of the war threat directly to the economic prize.
That is incredibly bold.
It is high-stakes poker. Because if Eritrea calls your bluff, you either have to back down and look weak, or you actually have to go to war.
And looking at Eritrea's response today, it really seems like they're calling the bluff.
They are. When Eritrea says this is fabricated and a campaign, they are signaling that they know exactly what Ethiopia is doing. They're saying, we see your game. You're inventing a border crisis to bully us into a port deal, and we aren't playing.
That explains the phrase empty recriminations. They see the accusations as just a pretext.
Right. If I believe you're lying just to get my port, why would I negotiate with you? Negotiating just validates your lie.
So we have a dialogue of the deaf. Ethiopia says security and ports are linked.
And Eritrea says, there is no security issue, and you are not touching our port.
It's a complete diplomatic deadlock. Ethiopia demanded withdrawal. Eritrea says we aren't there. Ethiopia offered talks if Eritrea withdraws. Eritrea refuses to talk because they reject the whole premise.
It's a logical knot. You can't withdraw from a place you claim you aren't occupying.
And you can't negotiate a port deal as a reward for peace if the other side thinks you are the aggressor.
Exactly. And while they stare each other down, the risk of a miscalculation is it's through the roof.
Let's talk about that miscalculation, because we see this language astonishing, deplorable, and it feels heavy. But is it just noise? Or is this how wars actually start?
This is how the justification for war starts. That's what you need to watch. When you formally accuse a neighbor of occupation in writing, you are laying the legal and political groundwork for military action.
You're building the case for self-defense.
Exactly. If Ethiopia moves troops across the border tomorrow, they can point to this letter from February 7th and say, we warned them, we told them to leave, they refused, we had to act.
And conversely, Eritrea's denial is their pre-defense. We told the world this was fabricated, we told you they were planning something.
Both sides are positioning themselves to be the victim if the shooting starts.
Which is terrifying, because once that happens, the logic of diplomacy just goes out the window.
It does. It becomes about kinetics and casualties.
So where does this leave us? We have the letter from the 7th, the rejection from the 9th. Is the ball back in Ethiopia's court now?
It is. They issued the ultimatum. Eritrea rejected it. Now Ethiopia has to decide, do they double down and, release evidence? Do they escalate militarily, or do they find a way to de-escalate without losing face?
And lurking in the background is the rest of the world. Because if the Red Sea gets messy, it's not just an Eritrean problem. It's a global supply chain problem.
And that might be part of the calculation. Maybe the noise is designed to get the international community to step in and mediate.
The hold me back strategy.
And perhaps force a deal on the port. Exactly. It's a possibility.
Right.
International mediation often follows these flare-ups.
But mediation requires trust. And reading these documents, trust seems to be in very short supply.
It's non-existent. Eritrea's letter didn't just reject the accusation, it rejected Ethiopia's good faith. They called it a campaign. You don't negotiate with a campaign, you defeat it.
So, to synthesize this,
Yeah.
we have a specific incident-alleged troop movements.
Right.
We have a specific demand to get out now.
Check.
We have a specific denial. This is false and fabricated.
Check.
But underneath all the noise about troops and rebels, there's this strategic ocean current pulling everything along. The desire for the Red Sea.
That is the gravity of the situation. The border skirmishes might be the waves, but the port of Assab is the tide.
And that's the question I want to leave everyone with today. We spend so much time looking at maps of where troops are. We look at the mountains, the border crossing.
Where the action is, right?
But maybe we're looking at the wrong map. When you see a headline about border tensions in the Horn of Africa, you should ask yourself, is this about the land? Or is the land just the leverage to get to the water?
It forces you to read the news completely differently. If the objective is the coast, then the border conflict is just a means to an end. It recontextualizes every soldier, every press release.
Possible access to the Red Sea. It was one sentence in a long letter, but it might be the only sentence that actually matters.
It is certainly the one that will determine what happens next. If Ethiopia is serious about that port, this tension isn't going away.
Well, on that note, we're going to keep our eyes on the wires. This is developing hour by hour. If another letter drops, or if, God forbid, that smoking cable actually sparks a fire, We will be back to break it down.
Stay skeptical, everyone. Read the fine print.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.